Hey, welcome to Upon Further Review, brought to you by Coors Light. I'm your host, Paul Gutierrez, and it has been a wild and woolly and wacky start to free agency for the Raiders. They've been very, very busy, and I guess you can call GM John Spytek Guy Fieri because he has been cooking. A lot of reported moves out there, so I'm just going to say that right off the top. All of these things are reported. They're not official yet, but let's get right to it. Big news right off the bat. Max Crosby, the face of the franchise, has been traded to the Baltimore Ravens for not one, but 2 first-round draft picks. Beyond that, quarterback Geno Smith, we kind of saw this coming, but he was traded back to the franchise that originally drafted him, the New York Jets. More moves coming down the pike here. The Raiders re-signing cornerback Eric Stokes. That helps solidify the back end of this rebuilt defense, this reimagined defense. And then the Raiders also picked up a receiver from the Vikings in free agency, Jalen Naylor. So if you want to keep track of everything that's going on in free agency, you got to keep your head on a swivel. You can head to Raiders.com/sources to get all the latest news on all the per sources free agency moves. Joining me now to break it all down is going to be the Hall of Famer Eric Allen. Eric, let's just jump right into it. The biggest news, I guess the lightning bolt out of the sky, Max Crosby reportedly traded to the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your surprise level on that? And then also just kind of your thoughts on the trade overall for the haul that the Raiders are getting back.
Yeah, I wasn't really surprised, but it still had a impact. Like, it's an earthquake for Raider Nation. And all of us who have worked with the Raiders know how proud we were of Max and his commitment to this organization, the way he played, the way he uplifted everyone on that football team. So definitely as a Raider fan, you miss and you're going to miss that amazing energy. But personally, for how I feel about Max, I'm excited that he's going to be in meaningful games like next year. Like, we're going to be able to, see this guy impact that football team in the National Football League in a way that he really wasn't able to do, with our club because, just the playoffs and that kind of situation. So just amazing for him and feel great for him. But the Raiders made it come up. John Spytek did a great job of getting a ton for Max to help this rebuild rather fast.
Yeah, 2 first-round draft picks. And if that was literally what the starting point was, they got what they wanted. They got what they needed. Yeah. And I hear what you're saying as far as like fans that really were invested in Max to wish the best for him. But I think you also want the Ravens to not do so well so you have a better first-round pick next year also. When you look at everything that Max has done with the Raiders last year, 73 total tackles, 10 sacks, 28 tackles for a loss. I mean, the guy could be a wrecking machine. He set a new Raiders single-season franchise record with those 28 tackles for a loss. So they're going to be missing him on the field, but the package that they got back for him, I mean, I was around when Khalil Mack was traded for a king's ransom back in the day. How do the Raiders make sure that this thing actually works better?
Well, it's really about the eval, right? Mm-hmm. And you're hopefully able to evaluate the players that you're going to get. The Max trade gave you the opportunity to, and then develop those guys, because those are going to be some young football players. And by the way that this organization has already jumped into free agency so far and have kept some of our guys, I'm very excited to see, how this new Raiders kind of player personnel situation will pan out. Now, we know one thing is whoever we bring here and line up and have to line up in the same spot as Max, he's not going to be Max, whoever that is. Right? So let's not get that twisted. Max is a extraordinary football player who played all the time with that great energy. But with the collection of guys that we're going to get, our team is going to be ultimately a better football team. So hopefully at some point here in the near future, we're able to match up on a great AFC championship game and have Max across the football field against some of these young players who are going to be on our team because of Max Crosby's value to this football team. And I think Max may be one of the only non-quarterback players over the age of 28 or 29 to ever get 2 first-round picks. And that's something, just great as far as what the Raiders were looking for to bargain with Max Crosby.
What does that say to you too, EA, about what trading Max, not only just for the bounty that you got, but what does that say about what the mentality is of this regime going forward with John Spytek in his second year as a GM and a first-time ever head coach in Clint Kubiak?
Well, it wasn't a mini rebuild or
Right.
a just reshuffling of the deck. This was a total up and down rebuild. We know our leaders, position wise, on offense and defense, are going to be totally different this year than they were last year. The jerseys that you see that are going to come into the stadium this year are going to be totally different from last year. This is a total rebuild, and we're able to do it fairly quickly because obviously, the most important aspect of the football team is that signature person or people are coming to see at the stadium, and that has been Max Crosby.
Yeah.
And now we're not going to have that, but what we're able to get from that, and hopefully with the draft, able to get 2 or 3 players who are going to be kind of the foundation of our Raiders football team for the next 4 or 5 years.
You're talking about a lot of guys are going to be, different jersey numbers, different guys wearing those jersey numbers going forward. The guy that was a quarterback last year, he was only here for a year, but Geno Smith also reportedly traded, going back to the franchise that originally drafted him, the New York Jets. Raiders get a 6th-round pick for him and send a 7th-round selection to the Jets as well. Again, I would say probably the biggest surprise here was that the Raiders were able to get a trade done with Geno rather than just simply moving on from him. What were your thoughts on Geno, not only how he played last year, but just kind of how things ended and the fact that he's moving on?
Paul, that's not the biggest surprise as far is concerned for me. My surprise is how I watched film and evaluated him as he was a free agent coming to the Raiders, and I saw a different football player than I did on the football field. I saw him coming into the season as someone who can extend plays, was able to have his ability, his athleticism, being outside the pocket with his eyes still downfield, making plays. I'm not sure if it was the offensive line issues or just a lost step here or there, but I didn't see that at all last year. And it just didn't end well, after basically their first game. And, we go up, we beat the Patriots, and you think this is a football team that's going to be able to kind of battle each and every week. But the offensive line injuries and the quarterback play was not good enough. And I think Geno would attest to that. And it just didn't seem to anything, whether it was Chip Kelly or the play calling or whatever it was, it just didn't seem to work last year with Geno Smith. So I was really surprised at the poor performance. And I'm sure if you sat down and spoke with him right now, I'm not sure if he can give you a real clear answer of why the play dropped from one year to another. Just didn't see it. And so I knew we'd have some issues, coming up to this year and trading Geno. But the Raiders, again, did a really good job of keeping their ear down to the ground, finding a team that needed some veteran leadership and opportunity, and maybe a chance for Geno to go back to where it all started, to kind of resurrect, his career again.
Yeah, and I think it was pretty much, you could see the writing on the wall as the season ended last year that he probably wasn't coming back. But then you pulled out the Sharpie and wrote it really big when you saw that the Raiders have the #1 overall draft pick, and there's a Heisman Trophy winner who's been linked to the Raiders by the name of Heisman Doza. Moving on, though, when you're looking at the Raiders' other offseason moves, the reported offseason moves thus far, moving on from the kicker Daniel Carlson to Matt Gay, he's coming on board. You see Malcolm Kuntz, they're bringing back on defense.
Yeah.
And I guess my question for you is this, Eric, is as a cornerback, obviously a cornerback's best friend is a pass rush. And when you're looking now at what they're doing, and they're going to a 3-4 base defense, how does that affect how you would prepare? And then especially bringing back somebody that has experience on this team, and with the new defensive coordinator, Rob Leonard, Malcolm Kuntz coming back, some of the other guys they've signed, Walker, Dean, Pay.
Yeah.
What does that defense look like to you now in that new scheme with these new guys coming?
It's going to look a lot different, especially shout out to Rob Leonard, just excellent job of him the last couple years, getting all those edge guys together and finding ways for those guys to get to the quarterback. He had a lot to do with how Max was able to develop and become just this all-world football player. So really excited to see Rob be the defensive coordinator this year. And yes, going to that 3-4 package, and on its base, I think right away you think when you're in a 3-4, that's a defense that's going to do a better job of up front plugging those gaps. And that means stopping the run. I think that is a critical area for this football team. We have to stop the run, and has to be a mark of consistency for our football team going into next year is we need to stop the run. So obviously when you do that, teams are going to be forced to go to more sub packages and throw the ball a little bit more. So those corners have to do a much better job of playing what I would call a one high, knowing that you're going to have help in that middle of the football field in those post areas. But everything else, man, you're going to have to be on it. You're going to have to be on top of it, preventing those big plays, forcing those receivers to have to run great routes for them to catch balls and really do a good job on those contested catches. You have to find a way to get that ball up in the air, tips, overthrows. We need more production at the cornerback and nickel spot of getting the football. That's one thing that the Raiders corners love to do, going back to Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes, Charles Woodson, Willie Brown, myself. You got to get your hands on the ball. So the 34 defense is going to hopefully stop the run on first and second down, force teams into throwing the ball on third down in situations where we can really take advantage of those opportunities. So I like the fit. Last year, in the last couple years, we tried to do a little bit of that elephant package where you have, the nose covered by one player and the two guards, but that really wasn't our base. So that was kind of out of bounds for us a little bit. But when you go to a 34 and you're practicing that every single day, you got that nose tackle, you got that tackle, you got the defensive end. Those guys are first and foremost there to stop the run, with Dean and Walker in the middle playing off ball, again, attacking those A and B gaps. And then you have your outside guys really ready to pin their ears back and stop the run also. But on those third and long or second long downs, they're going to pin their ears back. And hopefully Malcolm Kuntz can find that match he had a couple of years ago coming off the edge. And
that's what I was going to ask you specifically about, was the new linebackers. So that linebacker room is going to be completely rebuilt this year as well.
Yeah.
And in the first wave here of free agency, Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, that's exactly what you see their roles being kind of the run stuffers in the middle?
Without a doubt. Quay and Nakobe, they are specifically designed to be able to stop the run in those A and B gaps. They're going to be really close together, and you're not going to just see one guy. I'm not sure who's going to wear the red dot, but both those guys are very versatile. But the 34 is going to really streamline their jobs and say to themselves, you know what, when first down, the most important thing is making sure we're up in our gaps, we're stopping the run. That's going to give Rob Leonard an opportunity also to do a lot of mugging, where both those guys can be at the line of scrimmage covering those guards. So there's not going to be any gaps there to run into. And then those guys have proven that they've been able to stop the run and be in some big football games. And I've seen Dean a lot, being an Eagle fan, of course, and he's made some tremendous plays in the playoffs and Super Bowl. So really like to see that kind of experience, that big game experience, someone who's vocal and has been there and has done that. So I think both these guys are really good additions for our football team on the defensive side of the ball.
And they know each other fairly well too, Eric, considering they both played at Georgia together.
Yeah.
So you have that connection already too.
That's right. One thing down there in the SEC, they do a good job of stopping the run, and they're team oriented. So I like the fact that those guys are big time players in stopping the run.
And obviously, you being the Hall of Fame cornerback, I got to ask you this too. The Raiders bringing back Eric Stokes at cornerback, and then also signing getting Taron Johnson in a trade with Buffalo. What now does that cornerback room look like to you? Again, early wave of free agency, and there's probably some more moves to be done. There's still OTAs, training camp, everything else. But now you got these two frontline kind of guys there. How does that solidify things?
Well, one is Stokes is going to lock down that left side or right side, however you're looking at the team. And I think when you play well, and this new organization and John Spytek kind of tabbed him a year ago, and that says, you know what? He evaluated the player. He came into the program. He did well, was, amongst one of the top corners in the league, was relatively healthy. So they rewarded him. So that shows you that this organization last year was really involved and interested in his type of play. He played well and was able to get rewarded. That says a lot to other free agents around the league. You know, when you're talking about guys taking trips to places and you make a move and that guy continues to play well for you. So really happy for Stokes. So he's the elder statesman in the room right now. Now we're going to have a young guy, Porter, who's going to be on the other side, who's able to go through those rookie walls last year, and at the end of the season played so much better than he played at the beginning of the season. Was able to see some things and then go on the practice field, fix them, and show that he fixed those things. I think that is very important for him. He's a longer guy. He's a bigger guy. So that big body corner. And then Tay is one of those nickel sub-package players that we all need in this game today. We need someone who can line up inside, interior, play on first and second down, not afraid to put the big boy pads on, understand his run assignments, be able to turn that ball back in at times, and then when he needs to cover, you know, that slot receiver or that number 3 receiver, he's going to be there and counting on too. So really love that fact. Chin showed that he's a versatile football player last year. Maybe now we can kind of specialize him and not allow him or ask him to do so much. I mean, he was covering slot guys last year, tight ends, playing in the middle of the field, playing in the box. I mean, so much stuff. Did a really good job for us, but you would like to see him like practice exactly and specifically what he needs to do this year. So I hope for his sake, he's able to just prepare and look at couple things, more than like 4 or 5 things he needs to do during the game. And then Isaiah, playing that free safety, needs to get better. But you love that combination of athleticism, size, skill, technique. But, Paul, I always go back to this.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, who you are, what you look like, at the end of the season, you want to get around 20, 21 interceptions as a group. So we're going to put that big board up and put that 21 on there and say that's the number we're chasing this year. And that's the most important thing. I love guys who are tackling and doing all that stuff. But if you're a corner or nickel, we need to get our hands on the ball.
And like we mentioned earlier, the pass rush helping the pass coverage helping the pass rush. Kwity Paye now signed in free agency, coming to the Raiders, and you got Malcolm Kuntz coming back. Obviously, like you said, whoever's taking Max's spot is not Max. Nobody's Max.
Right.
But now, how do you look at this pass rush now? At least the guys up front, again in the 3-4 base, but who knows how much they're going to be in that base? What does a Kwity Paye kind of add to what they want to do down low?
Yeah, I think Paye is going to be our number 1 edge rusher. He's going to be on the field all the time. The past couple of years, he's played 15, 16 games out of the season. So I think he's going to be our number 1 pass rusher. I think Malcolm, this is really the opportunity that he needs to have in training camps to show that he has that burst back. Saw it at the end of the season a couple times, but he's going to have to prove that he's more than just a third down pass rusher. He's going to have to prove that he can come in and really take the double team and the slides off of Paye. And if he can do that, then that's going to help him out. That's going to help the rush out. That's going to help the coverage out. So really looking forward to how he is going to utilize this opportunity to really show that he's back and he can utilize his skill set to help this football team out. But Paye, I think, is going to be our number 1 edge rusher.
And that's what's interesting to me is you still need that monster down in the nose tackle then, right? If you got the 2 ends and they're standing up.
Yes.
How different is that for those guys to do that? And when I think back as a fan of the Raiders when I was a kid, whenever they were winning titles, they were always in a 3-4 defense because you had Howie Long able to play all over the place. You had Lyle Alzado, Bill Pickell was the monster in the middle, Rod Martin, Ted Hendricks on the outside, Matt Millen in the middle. Is there just some? I mean, the game changes obviously, but is it still kind of the same when it comes to schemes and it's all about the talent, really?
Well, I think defensively you have to find a way to be competitive with what the offense is presenting. Now, we're in the second year of this, I call it throwback to the 90s type of football, where the running game is essential. You have good defenses, like the Seahawks of this year, the Eagles of last year, and the Eagles a couple years ago, really focus on the run. And we're seeing teams, Detroit Lions and some of the other football teams, focus on the running game and the defense. And I think defensively, we have to catch up. You have to have a tackle, a nose guard. You got to have some beef up in the front to be able to take care of their gaps, kind of defend those linebackers so they can kind of roam around and run a little bit free. But it's really important up front, like you're saying. Yeah. Well, you're having Bakel, you're having Darrell Russell, back in the late 90s and early 2000s. You need a couple guys up front who are able to dominate from that tackle position, be able to rush the passer, but more importantly, they can two-gap if you need them. They can control that center, control that guard. I think those are the kind of football teams that we're going to see. They're going to really make a huge impact defensively in the next couple of years.
Talking X's and O's with you, Eric's got me fired up. I can't wait for the season to start
Let's
here.
Go.
But the Raiders, they need to still address some needs here, and they were awarded two compensatory picks, a fourth round and a fifth round. How likely is it to find somebody at that stage of the draft?
Hey, it's big time. We all know that. We know about the depth. If it's going to be depth in the offensive line, defensive line, we know some guys who were maybe under-recruited and didn't go to the right place and found a place at a small school and tore it up. You get them in, they have all the measurables, but they always have those things that you can't measure, and those are the guys you find in the third, fourth, fifth round that become great pros for your football team.
Gotcha. Eric, again, fired up to go. And, I'm not going to let this one slide because I heard you say that the goal is 21 interceptions. What was your uniform number when you played, Eric? 21.
21.
21. Eric,
that's right.
Thank you so much for helping me break it down on the defensive side of the ball and everything else in free agency. We'll talk to you soon.
Always great. Take care, my man.
All right, don't go anywhere because coming up next, we're going to take on the offensive side of the ball and the rest of free agency with James Jones.
When I found out we had to move to Italy, I was pretty shocked, and it was a crazy experience to, tell all, my teammates, my coaches, all my friends that, in, a month or so I'll be packing up, moving overseas, and, you'll probably never see me again. I think the hardest thing in life is to handle change, and, such a big change early has really set me up, to where I'm at now. Playing football in Italy, it was fun, but, it wasn't the most competitive. But, just getting to travel and see different aspects of different countries. I mean, going to Germany, going to Spain, going to different places around Italy.
Ashton carved out his path, living in Italy, where American football wasn't as mainstream. Ashton and the game of football found their way to each other.
Welcome back to Upon Further Review, and joining me now is the man who led the NFL with 14 touchdown catches back in 2012, James Jones. James, again, a quick start to free agency for the Raiders, but the big news, really, the kind of the lightning bolt that came out of the blue, if you weren't paying attention, I guess, Max Crosby being traded to the Baltimore Ravens for a couple of first-round draft picks. Knee-jerk reaction when you heard that news?
I mean, it struck me to the core a little bit just because, that's Mad Max Crosby, man, who is, if you say, what does a Raider look like? You're probably going to point to Max Crosby when you talk about just how his style of play on the football field, the way he was with the fans off the football field, just max effort every single play, just the mindset, the mentality. That's a true Raider. So it hurt. I'm not going to say it didn't. But what I will say is, it's very rare that you finish your time with the same team. And I feel like he's in a good situation. And I feel like the Raiders, got what they deserved for him, being able to get those first-round picks. So I thought it was a good deal for both teams.
And it seems like it's one of those deals, too, where both parties actually kind of win because he gets Max into a situation that he wanted to be in, where he's on more of a contender or on a faster track to winning. And it sets the Raiders up with those 2 first-round picks, so 4 total first-round picks over the next 2 years to get this restart, this rebuild kind of going in faster action. Beyond that, the guy that was the quarterback last year, we didn't figure that Geno Smith was going to be coming back. But the fact that the Raiders were able to get him traded and get something back in return for Geno Smith. What'd you think about that news when you heard that report come out as well?
Yeah, that was huge because I mean when you have a plan and you know when that player is not into that plan and you were able to get something for him instead of just releasing him and letting him go, you were able to get something for him. I thought that was huge. Geno gets to go back to where it all started for him, and then the Raiders, get a good pick back for him to be able to help develop this roster with some young talent. So I thought that was a really good move by the Raiders. There's some exciting things going on in Las Vegas right now, man, that we should be excited about.
Beyond the 2 moves of some familiar faces there's new faces that are coming in as well. And I'm definitely going to jump into the offensive side of things with you as well. But Quay Walker at linebacker coming in. I know you've very familiar with him and his game. What can Raider fans expect from the newest linebacker to join the team?
Man, just like I said about Max Crosby, when you say Raider, it's like a certain style of play. You know what I'm saying? When you say Raider. When I hear Quay Walker's name, I automatically think Raider. I mean, the dude is violent. The dude is fast. The dude has the mindset, the mentality. We all know he's a Georgia Bulldog. I think this was probably one of the best signings in free agency. Quay Walker is one of the best linebackers in the National Football League, and Raider fans is going to see very, very soon. He is sideline to sideline. He's fast. He's downhill. He can cover. You pair him with Nakobe Dean. This is probably, one of the best linebacker combos in the National Football League, trotting on the football field when you talk about speed and power with the ability to cover. So this is a great, great addition for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Especially now that they're changing the base defense into a 3-4. They seem like they really fit that as well. And I know a lot of people said that's being overplayed or overhyped, but if you're changing your base, who knows how often you're going to be in that base, but it has to change the personality a little bit on defense as well, doesn't it?
And not only that, the personality is in the personnel with what they have, because you got 2 off-ball linebackers that can cover. Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker does not have to come off the field. Quay Walker was not coming off the field for the Green Bay Packers. He's an every down linebacker that can cover. And it's the same thing with Nakobe Dean. So if you want to put those tight ends out there, or you want to put some little slot receivers out there, Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean, they can cover. So I'm telling you, these 2 linebackers playing next to each other like they did in college is going to be a dangerous, dangerous duo for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Beyond those 2 guys up front, in front of those guys is going to be a familiar face for the Raiders. They're reportedly bringing back Malcolm Kuntz as well. Didn't have the season that everybody thought he might have, but he was coming off the torn ACL from the previous season. Yeah. Malcolm Kuntz, what does that say about what the new defensive coordinator, who obviously is the same face that Malcolm knows, and Rob Leonard? He was a former position coach, his D-line coach. Now he's the DC. What does that tell you about the Raiders' plans, especially up front, by bringing back Malcolm Kuntz?
To be honest with you, I think it says more about Kuntz, man. I think it says more about his ability that we weren't truly, truly able to see because of the torn ACL. But when you talk about value for the money you pay for Kuntz to come in there and be able to be a pass rusher for your football team, I think this is a great, great value signing for the Raiders. You're talking about an athletic pass rusher that can get after the quarterback. He is going to be a good football player, and I'm sure – I mean, I don't got I ain't in the draft war room, but I'm sure it's going to be another pass rusher coming to join him.
All right. Offensive side of the ball, that's where your specialty is. You're a football player, obviously, but you were a receiver. Random question for you. How much of a friend is a center to a wide receiver, especially with who the Raiders are reportedly bringing in, the crown jewel of the offensive line free agent class, Tyler Linderbaum from the Baltimore Ravens?
Man, I absolutely love this right here because, number one, you're talking about a guy that controls everything.
Yeah.
Everybody, when you talk about an offense, everybody wants to strictly go to the quarterback. If you don't got a good center, man, you're going to be in trouble. You got a guy that really can demand and tell people where they're doing, what's their job. We slide into protection over here, the communication part of it. When you have a center in there that can really do it all and can do it like that, and even cadence-wise, that can handle the cadence, switching up the cadence, doing certain things like that, you need a center that's really, really good. Some of the best offenses I've been around, the centers have been very, very good. So I'm excited about this signing. You get a guy that can truly lead the pack, that can truly, communicate with the offensive line, have his offensive line on the string. And not only that, you're a receiver's best friend because you got to get the play started. But for a quarterback to have a center that is in command, that knows everything that's going on, that's going to be huge for the quarterback.
And the center's the brain trust of the offensive line, obviously. But when you look now that you know who the center is, now you know what JPJ is, Jackson Powers Johnson. Mm-hmm. He's a guard. Colton Miller, he's coming back off injury as well. Now it seems like they've got the left side of the offensive line settled in. When you look at the rest of that offensive line, how huge is that now knowing who the center is? And it's a guy that's as accomplished as Tyler is.
It's huge because it's all about the mindset of what we're trying to get done, too. I mean, if we're building in them trenches, you got to start with the center. You got to start with the guy that's the most important piece because the main thing is trying to get Ashton Jeanty going and getting this run game going. And you just mentioned 3 really good offensive linemen. You're able to put JP back at his spot at guard, knowing, he can play well over there. You'll get Colton Miller back. I'm sure they'll add a couple more pieces on the offensive line. But when you talk about us being on the right track, this is huge, man. This is huge to be able to run the ball, be able to lean on some people, especially late in some games, and force them to tackle Jeanty.
Now, the Raiders have been linked to, with that number 1 overall pick, they've been linked to a certain quarterback who just won a Heisman Trophy. But you don't want to put a young quarterback, any quarterback out there really, because we saw it last year, behind an offensive line that was as leaky as it was last year. They gave up a league high 64 sacks. And as you mentioned, Ashton Jeanty couldn't really get going because he was getting hit so hard and so often behind the line of scrimmage anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, from a receiver's perspective, when you look at an offensive line, how key is that to everything? I mean, it seems like an obvious question, an obvious answer to it, but from your perspective as a receiver, how important is that offensive line just to the offense as a whole?
I mean, it's huge, man, because, shoot, if you can't win in the trenches, you can't really get no plays started. You can't really get no plays going. You can't really get into a rhythm, So, when you start talking about building a football team, that's why everybody always says inside out, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to get some plays going and get it started. But if you are struggling up there, and that is the way our league is going, right? You're getting a lot of teams that offensive lines, they really – they're not truly the best, offensive lines out there. But when you get a quarterback that can move, that's mobile, that can help these offensive linemen, just because their ability to extend plays and make plays with their legs, that's huge too. And that's a part of the protection.
Yeah.
Because it's a certain way you have to rush a quarterback that has legs. It's a certain way a defensive coordinator has to call the game when a quarterback's able to move and he's mobile. That's why you don't really see Lamar Jackson get blitzed or getting played man-to-man a lot. Because if he escapes on the man-to-man and everybody's back turned, see you later. So it's a certain way you got to play these quarterbacks. So that's a big part. That's a big part of it too, man. So, our league is going to where these quarterbacks are mobile. And I'm not saying Lamar Jackson mobile, but at least mobile enough to get outside the pocket and escape and make some plays with his legs. That's part of the protection. So, hopefully we get a quarterback in there that's able to do that, help this offensive line out.
Yeah, especially last year's offensive line was ranked 32nd, which is last in the NFL by Pro Football Focus. Let's get on to some more happier things here for you. Wide receivers. The Raiders have reportedly signed Jalen Nailor to a 3-year deal. Again, yeah, right there, right off the bat. Thoughts? Jalen Nailor, go.
Love it. You're getting speed, but not only are you getting speed, you're getting a heck of a route runner. And when you're talking about bringing in a quarterback, whatever quarterback it may be, a young quarterback out of the draft, a veteran quarterback, you want a guy that has some speed and is able to run the whole route tree. This is a phenomenal start. You put him on the other side of Brock Bowers. You put him with Michael Mayer. You put him with Ashton Jeanty. You're talking about a really good skill position offense going out there on that football field. I absolutely love this signing, and I would love to see a couple more pieces join these young fellas, man. But this right here is a great start. I love everything about him.
What does he bring to the room to join Trey Tucker, Jack Besh, Dante Thornton?
I think he brings a little bit more than all those guys, to be honest with you, if I'm really being honest. Like I said, I've already touched on the speed, but when you talk about the ability to run the whole route tree and the playmaking ability, I think he has a little bit more juice and a little bit more, route running than those guys do in that building. And I think he walks into the Raiders wide receiver room wide out number one right now, unless something changes.
Yeah, because when you look at what's coming back, Trey Tucker's the most accomplished, or he had the most stats really of the receivers that are coming back. And there's a very fine line between wide receiver and pass catcher, and that's where you're going to put the tight ends anyways with Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. But Trey Tucker, what did he show you last year? He's not necessarily wide receiver one, but by default he kind of became that last season. What did Trey Tucker show you?
Trey showed me that he can be extremely productive and we can rely on him. And I think when you're talking about the wide receiver position, the main thing you want to do is let the quarterback know you can trust me and you can rely on me. Trey Tucker is going to be a big part of this offensive system that we have going in, with his ability to run, his speed. You can get him on some of these gadget plays. You can put him on some of these option routes. But he showed you that size don't matter. I'm a really, really reliable receiver, and I can make plays when plays need to be made. And I think he's going to be a great addition to this wide receiver crew. Even the guys that we bring in. Trey proved last year that he can play this game at a very, very high level.
Now, moving on to the special teams room, Daniel Carlson, longtime Raider, one of the final Oakland Raiders, especially with Max Crosby gone. There's only 2 Oakland Raiders left now with A.J. Cole and Colton Miller. But the Raiders did move on and sign a kicker, Matt Gay. Thoughts on just kind of moving on from Daniel Carlson, who had just kind of been as automatic as you could, he had the nickname Cash Money Carlson for a reason, but the decision was made to move on from him.
It's crazy, man. Playing in the National Football League for a long time, man. It is, I see more and more every day. It's what have you done for me lately? Like, you have to be a consistent football player in this league, and once you stop being consistent in this league, then they start thinking elsewhere. He was a great player for the Raiders. To be honest with you, like we used to say in the locker room, hey, kickers, just do your job. All right, we're going to get y'all in a position. We're going to go down here and we're going to do our job, catch it, run it, throw it, tackle it, whatever we got to do. Just do your job. And the best thing a kicker could do, if they're not saying your name, that means you're doing your job. So, we had to, even last year, we had to kind of say Carlson's name a little bit too much. And I think that was the decision. So this next kicker coming in, hey, man, do your job, man. I mean, we want to see your jerseys, but we really don't want to see your jerseys, man. We don't need to know your name. That means you're doing your job.
I think you'd only want to see him if he's kicking extra points after you're scoring touchdowns.
That too.
Hey, so the Raiders are also awarded a couple of compensatory picks after the 4th and 5th rounds here. What kind of player can be found at that point of the draft that could address a real and specific need, you think, for the Raiders?
Well, you have the James Joneses in the 3rd round. You have the Donald Drivers in the 7th rounds. Yeah. I mean, shoot, you got, even certain, big-time players that went free agents and all that. When we start getting down there in them later round picks, I truly believe it's easier to develop a corner, a wide receiver, and certain guys like that, when you get the right coaches around them, man. So with those picks, I'm always leaning towards kind of a skill position, a wide receiver, a corner, because I feel like it's easier to kind of develop those guys with the right coaching and putting those guys in the right system, especially if you have the quarterback and you got the guys in the trenches. So when I start getting in them later rounds, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, I'm, in my humble opinion, wanting to go, skill position wise. I think it's very rare that you find the Max Crosbys and guys like that are late round picks that turn in to be, all pro pass rushers. So that will be my plan.
James, as always, thank you so much for joining me, especially trying to, weave through this whole thing in the early days of free agency, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Not a problem. Hopefully keep making some splashes.
Sounds good.
Forward.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, head to Raiders.com/sources to get the latest news on all the per sources free agency moves. All right, that'll do it for this week's edition of Upon Further Review. Thanks to our guests, Eric Allen and James Jones, for reviewing all the recent news going on with the Raiders. To stay up to date on all things silver and black, you can visit the Raiders YouTube channel and also log into Raiders.com for more content.